If there's one state in America that seems to live rent-free in everyone's imagination, it's Texas. The land of cowboy hats, oil rigs, endless highways, and a swagger that's as wide as the horizon. Ask anyone outside the state what they think of Texas, and you'll hear the same predictable list. Too hot, too big, too political, too Texan. But that version of Texas? It's outdated. The real story of Texas today is far more complicated and a lot more interesting than most people realize. Texas isn't what it used to be. It's transforming fast. Over the past few years, Texas has quietly become one of the fastest evolving places in the country. Sure, it still has wide open spaces and pickup trucks the size of small boats, but it's also where new urban experiments, cultural reinventions, and economic revolutions are taking shape every single week. The truth is, if you still think Texas is nothing but dusty small towns and endless sprawl, you're about a decade behind reality. I wanted to find out what was actually happening on the ground. Not the headlines, not the stereotypes, but the real texture of life across Texas. So I spent time diving deep into how its cities are growing, how people are moving, and what they're building next. I talked to locals, planners, students, and entrepreneurs who are shaping the future of this massive, misunderstood state. What I found completely changed the way I think about Texas, and it might do the same for you each. Behind the cowboy image, a new kind of Texas is rising. Because beneath the surface of the clichés, something remarkable is happening here. New generations are rethinking how cities should look, how communities should connect, and how opportunity should spread beyond state lines. From walkable downtowns in Austin to cultural districts in Dallas, from transit upgrades in Houston to sustainable projects rising out of San Antonio, the old Texas story is giving way to a new one. So before you scroll away, thinking you already know what Texas is all about, stay with me. The next few minutes might challenge everything you've been told. This isn't just about freeways or cowboy culture. It's about how a state famous for doing things its own way is quietly rewriting the American future. First impressions versus reality. The moment most people picture Texas, they imagine an ocean of freeways stretching toward the horizon, pickup trucks idling in the heat, and neon-lit barbecue joints tucked beside giant parking lots. That image isn't completely wrong, but it's only one thin slice of what life in Texas actually looks like now. The first impression is almost always built on scale. Everything looks massive, from the roads to the skyline. But what's easy to miss is how much detail is hiding underneath that scale. Texas is changing at street level, in ways that don't fit the old headlines. Texas cities are reinventing themselves, one block at a time. Take a walk through downtown Austin, and the skyline tells a very different story from even a few years ago. Tech companies have turned old warehouses into buzzing workspaces. Startups are filling mid-rise buildings, and small coffee shops have replaced what used to be dusty lots. In Dallas, the transformation is visible in places like Deep Ellum and Bishop Arts, where walkable blocks, live music, and local design have replaced the parking lot culture people once mocked. Even in Houston, often called the poster child of car dependency, compact neighborhoods and bike trails now run through areas that used to be strictly industrial. The Texas that people picture from old movies is still out there. But the Texas that's quietly being built is something else entirely. The contrast hits hardest when you experience it firsthand. What seems like a sprawling, car-obsessed state from a distance starts to feel surprisingly human up close. People are walking more, biking more, and building local communities that feel almost European in their rhythm. Farmers' markets are taking over spaces once reserved for gas stations. Apartment towers share blocks with taquerias that have been there for generations. The collision between old and new isn't awkward anymore. It's the identity of modern Texas. Forget the stereotypes. Texas is evolving faster than anyone expects. Many outsiders still assume that Texas is resistant to change. But the truth is the opposite. Cities here are experimenting with new ideas faster than most people realize, whether that means turning abandoned rail lines into greenways or reimagining stormwater canals as public parks. The perception that Texas is standing still doesn't survive contact with reality. The next time someone says Texas hasn't evolved, they probably haven't looked closely enough. What's happening here right now feels less like the past of America and more like a preview of its future. The cities you thought you knew. When most people picture the cities of Texas, they imagine vast skylines surrounded by freeways, each one blending into the next. But step closer and you realize how completely different each city has become. Austin, once known as a quirky college town with a few music bars, has transformed into a global tech and cultural hub. High-rises now shape the horizon along Lady Bird Lake. Startups line South Congress, and on any given afternoon, paddleboarders share the water with skyline reflections. Traffic is still a headache, sure, but the city's evolution shows how fast Texas can adapt when creativity meets opportunity. Austin has gone from keep it weird to keep it wired, while still holding on to its offbeat soul. Travel north to Dallas, and the story shifts again. The city that once prided itself on cars and commerce has been quietly investing in livability. Downtown Dallas is no longer just a business district that empties out after sunset. The Arts District is buzzing. Clyde Warren Park has become a model for reclaiming highway space, and electric buses now glide through neighborhoods that used to be defined by congestion. The energy here feels intentional, a mix of confidence and experimentation that shows how a car-driven city can turn itself into something more human-scaled. Houston's chaos has become its creativity. Over in Houston, the biggest surprise might be how personal everything feels, despite the city's reputation for sprawl. Inside the 610 loop, new bike paths stretch for miles along the bayous, connecting neighborhoods that used to be cut off from each other. The city's food scene has exploded into one of the most diverse in the country, and local artists are redefining public spaces with murals, markets, and music festivals. Houston may not have zoning, but that chaos has become a kind of freedom, an urban experiment that somehow works. Further west, San Antonio is embracing its cultural roots while modernizing its core. The Riverwalk has expanded into a network of trails that connect museums, parks, and neighborhoods. Historic districts coexist with sleek architecture, and new residents keep arriving for both affordability and lifestyle. San Antonio's mix of heritage and innovation has turned it into one of the most quietly influential cities in the state. Across Texas, cities are rewriting the rules of urban life. Each of these cities tells a different story, but together they reveal the real Texas. Not a relic of the past, but a testing ground for the future of American urban life. What used to be dismissed as car country is now experimenting with walkability, sustainability, and design in ways few expected. The cities you thought you knew are rewriting their own definitions, one block, one street, and one bold idea at a time. how Texas is quietly redefining urban life. There's a quiet revolution unfolding across Texas, and it's not happening in boardrooms or government offices. It's happening on sidewalks, in community meetings, and along the trails that wind through its cities. Texas, long seen as the ultimate car state, is rethinking what it means to build for people instead of just for vehicles. It's subtle, but unmistakable. A transformation that's reshaping neighborhoods, public spaces, and the daily rhythm of city life. Take Houston's Bayou Greenways project, for example, which has turned flood-prone corridors into one of the most extensive urban trail systems in the country. What used to be forgotten drainage channels are now peaceful bike routes and walkways linking entire communities. Dallas has followed a similar path, converting underused rail corridors into green arteries that connect people, parks, and transit. These projects don't just make cities more scenic. They're proof that Texas is learning how to build smarter and more resilient without losing its bold identity. Transit is another piece of the puzzle. Austin's Project Connect is moving forward with new rail lines and expanded rapid bus service designed to make commuting less dependent on cars. In Houston, electric buses are joining the fleet, and ridership has started to climb in key corridors where frequent service actually works. Even smaller cities like Fort Worth and El Paso are experimenting with micromobility and dedicated bus lanes, showing that innovation here isn't limited to the big four metros. Suburbs are reinventing themselves from the inside out. This shift goes beyond transportation. Across Texas, urban planning has taken on a community-driven flavor that blends practicality with creativity. Former strip malls are being reinvented as mixed-use districts, combining housing, local shops, and entertainment within walking distance. Suburban downtowns, once sleepy after dark, are buzzing with restaurants, co-working spaces, and weekend markets. Cities that once expanded endlessly outward are beginning to look inward, transforming what they already have instead of simply building more of the same. What's remarkable is that this isn't happening through top-down mandates. It's driven by locals, city planners, small developers, and residents who want more options than traffic and asphalt. They're proving that Texas can be both big and livable, modern yet authentic. The idea that urban life in Texas means endless highways is fading fast. What's taking its place is a new model of growth, one that honors the state's independent spirit while creating places that people genuinely love to live in. Texas isn't waiting for permission to redefine urban America. It's already doing it. One street redesign, one transit upgrade, and one neighborhood revival at a time. The hidden culture nobody talks about. There's a side of Texas that rarely makes it into the headlines. A version that doesn't fit neatly into stereotypes or social media snapshots. Beneath the talk about booming cities, business headlines, and wide-open spaces, a thriving cultural movement is redefining what it means to be Texan. It's not about rodeos or ranch life, though those traditions still have their place. It's about how people from around the world have brought their languages, flavors, music, and stories, weaving them into something completely new. Something that feels unmistakably local, yet globally connected. Texas culture isn't fading. It's exploding with color, flavor, and rhythm. Walk through Houston's East End or Dallas's Oak Cliff, and you'll find street murals that tell the story of migration, struggle, and pride. The sound of Latin beats mixes with blues, Afro beats, and country in the same city block. Vietnamese faux shops sit next to taco trucks, and no one finds that strange anymore. The food culture alone is enough to challenge every old idea about what Texas is supposed to be. From Korean barbecue tacos to Nigerian-inspired pop-ups in Austin, Texas, has quietly become one of the most diverse and creative culinary destinations in America. Every meal feels like a history lesson written in spice and smoke. Art and design are also driving this transformation. Across the state, young creatives are reclaiming abandoned warehouses, turning them into studios, galleries, and live performance spaces. The mix of influences is wild. Part Southern grit, part borderland rhythm, part global future. In San Antonio, street artists have turned once forgotten alleys into open-air museums. In Houston's Montrose, vintage bungalows now house avant-garde exhibits and experimental theater. Dallas's design district is booming with makers who blend traditional crafts with futuristic aesthetics. It's as if Texas has stopped waiting for cultural validation from the coasts and decided to create its own. The sound of Texas has changed, and it's more powerful than ever. Music, too, is evolving beyond the expected. Country and rock will always have roots here, but hip-hop, Tejano, indie, and fusion genres now dominate local stages. New artists are emerging from neighborhoods that never had platforms before, telling stories that reflect the modern Texas experience. Complex, multicultural, and fiercely authentic. The same diversity that defines its population has become the heartbeat of its sound. What makes this hidden culture so powerful is how organic it feels. It wasn't planned by developers or marketed by tourism boards. It grew from people simply creating spaces for themselves, shaping an identity that matches the reality of Texas today. Every festival, food market, and art walk tells the same truth, that Texas isn't a monolith. It's a living experiment in coexistence, where old traditions meet new voices and everyone adds something to the mix. The Texas most people never see isn't hiding because it wants to stay secret. It's just been overlooked by those who stopped paying attention. Once you do, you realize this isn't just the most diverse state in the country. It's one of the most dynamic cultural frontiers anywhere. The big misunderstanding. Few places in America are as misunderstood as Texas. For decades, outsiders have painted the state with one giant brushstroke, assuming it's all conservative politics, endless pickup trucks, oil money, and cowboy hats. That narrative might make good headlines, but it completely misses the complexity of what's really happening here. The big misunderstanding about Texas is that it's stuck in the past, when in reality, it's one of the most forward-looking states in the country. Its identity isn't frozen. It's constantly rewriting itself in ways that surprise even lifelong residents. Texas isn't just for cars anymore. It's building a new way to move. People love to say Texas is built for cars, but that's changing faster than anyone expected. Cities like Austin and Houston have made measurable progress in public transit, walkability, and cycling. Dallas has one of the largest light rail networks in the United States, and Houston's bus system redesign has become a national case study for improving efficiency. Even in suburban regions, once known for traffic jams, communities are experimenting with new zoning codes to encourage mixed-use development. The myth of Texas as the land of eternal gridlock is fading because people are demanding options, and cities are finally responding. Another major misconception is that Texas culture is one-dimensional. The truth is, it's built on diversity. The state's population now represents nearly every corner of the world, with thriving communities from Latin America, Africa, Asia, and Europe, shaping everything from cuisine to entrepreneurship. what outsiders see as cultural contradictions. A taco stand beside a BBQ pit, a mega church down the street from a yoga studio, Texans see as normal life. This constant blend of influences is the source of its innovation, not a clash of identities. The Texas economy isn't just oil, it's tech, renewables, and resilience. Economically, the story is equally misunderstood. Texas isn't just about oil and gas anymore. It's one of the top states for renewable energy, leading the nation in wind power generation and rapidly expanding in solar. Tech hubs in Austin and Dallas are attracting global investment, while manufacturing and logistics are thriving in places like Fort Worth, Laredo, and Houston's Port region. The modern Texas economy is diversified, resilient, and surprisingly green for a state still associated with crude oil. The biggest misunderstanding of all, though, might be about mindset. Texas isn't anti-progress. It's anti-limits. The same independence that once defined its frontier spirit now fuels its reinvention. Whether it's urban planners fighting for better public spaces, young entrepreneurs building sustainable startups, or artists reimagining what it means to be Southern, Texans are challenging every old assumption about their home. The outside world might still see the old Texas, but inside the state, the future is already under construction. The future Texans are building. Across Texas, something extraordinary is taking shape. A future that looks less like the clichés of the past and more like a blueprint for the next generation of American living. From the tech corridors of Austin to the energy labs outside Houston, Texans are proving that innovation doesn't have to mean abandoning tradition. It can grow directly from it. The state that once symbolized wide-open frontiers is now exploring new kinds of frontiers: digital, sustainable, and deeply local. Texas innovation isn't slowing down. It's getting smarter and greener. In Austin, tech growth is shifting from pure software towards sustainability and urban design. Startups are experimenting with modular housing, smart infrastructure, and clean energy systems that could scale nationwide. The city's new housing developments are being built with walkability and green space in mind, a far cry from the suburban layouts that once defined Texas growth. In Dallas, the focus is on reimagining neighborhoods, transforming underused office parks into vibrant, mixed-use districts where people can live, work, and play within a few blocks. The city's cultural districts are becoming laboratories for sustainable architecture, with solar-integrated facades, tree-lined boulevards, and stormwater parks that double as public art. Houston's reinvention might be the most symbolic of all. Long known as the global capital of oil and gas, it's now quietly leading a clean energy transition. The region's universities and startups are working on next-generation hydrogen fuel, battery storage, and carbon capture technologies. These aren't just pilot projects. They're reshaping entire sectors of the economy. Even the port, one of the busiest in the world, is implementing electrified operations to cut emissions while keeping pace with record trade growth. The future of energy may still flow through Texas, but it's becoming a cleaner, smarter, and more efficient version of itself. San Antonio is building its own model of sustainable growth, investing in cultural preservation and renewable energy at the same time. Its neighborhoods are expanding solar access, while local programs focus on restoring historic areas without pushing out the people who built them. Cities across the Rio Grande Valley are also stepping into the conversation, using green infrastructure and cross-border collaboration to shape the next phase of Texas urbanism. This transformation isn't top-down. It's grassroots, local, and unstoppable. What's striking is that this transformation isn't being dictated from above. It's happening from the ground up, through communities, local entrepreneurs, students, and civic leaders who refuse to accept that progress has to come at the cost of character. They are combining high-tech ideas with Texas pragmatism, turning challenges like climate, traffic, and housing into opportunities for reinvention. Every new trail, solar panel, startup incubator, and renovated Main Street tells the same story. Texans aren't waiting for someone else to define the future. They're building it themselves. The old image of Texas as a place resistant to change is fading, replaced by one of restless creativity. What's emerging is a state unafraid to experiment, unafraid to fail, and determined to build a future that's bold, resilient, and unmistakably Texan. What this means for the rest of America. What's happening in Texas isn't just a regional story. It's a preview of where the rest of the country might be headed. The state's rapid urban growth, cultural transformation, and shifting priorities are rewriting the national playbook on how cities evolve. Texas has always been seen as larger than life, but its current transformation carries lessons for every American city facing growth, climate pressure, and social change. If a place famous for freeways and suburban sprawl can reinvent itself around walkability, sustainability, and diversity, it proves that no city is locked into its past. The real message Texas sends is that change doesn't have to start in the usual places. It doesn't have to begin on the coasts or in long-established centers of innovation. It can come from the heartland, from places once written off as too traditional, too spread out, or too resistant to progress. What's unfolding across Texas shows that innovation is no longer limited to technology. It's embedded in how people live, move, and connect with one another. Whether it's rethinking transportation, investing in renewable energy, or designing inclusive neighborhoods, Texas is showing that growth and responsibility can coexist. Texas proves progress and identity don't have to be opposites. For cities across the United States watching their own challenges pile up, housing costs, climate resilience, aging infrastructure, Texas offers a case study in reinvention without losing identity. Its cities are proving that local culture doesn't have to disappear when progress arrives. Instead, it can evolve and strengthen the very fabric of what makes a place worth living in. Texas may not be perfect, but it's doing something few states manage to pull off, blending bold ambition with grassroots action. The rest of America can look to Texas and see what's possible when big ideas meet local pride. The same independent streak that once fueled its frontier history is now driving a new kind of frontier, one defined by creativity, sustainability, and inclusion. If this transformation can happen here, it can happen anywhere. Texas is no longer just a symbol of the American past. It's becoming a glimpse of the American future. Why Texas might just change everything to meet it. What's happening across Texas right now is more than a local transformation. It's a signal of where the American story is headed next. For generations, Texas symbolized freedom, size, and self-reliance. Those ideas haven't disappeared. They've evolved. The state that once measured success in acres and oil rigs is now measuring progress in innovation, sustainability, and community. The reinvention is quiet but powerful, driven not by slogans or politics, but by everyday people who are tired of waiting for permission to build a better version of home. Texas is proving that no place is permanently defined by its past. The freeways that once separated neighborhoods are becoming green corridors. The warehouses that once sat empty are now incubators for art, tech, and social impact. Small towns are reinventing themselves through renewable energy and local entrepreneurship, while cities are learning that progress doesn't mean losing character. It means finding new ways to express it. The real Texas isn't the caricature of cowboy boots and oil wells. It's the collision of cultures, generations, and ideas working together to create something far more dynamic. The biggest takeaway is that progress here doesn't follow a perfect blueprint. It's messy, experimental, and sometimes chaotic. But that's exactly what makes it work. Texas doesn't wait for national approval before trying something new. It builds first, refines later, and keeps improving until it sticks. Whether it's city planners turning flood zones into parks or residents fighting to make their neighborhoods more walkable, the story of modern Texas is a story of constant motion. It's not about replacing the old identity, but expanding it to include everyone who calls this place home. To understand Texas, you have to see it, taste it, and feel its energy. For anyone watching from outside, the best way to understand this shift is to experience it. Visit the neighborhoods being reborn from forgotten industrial blocks. Eat at the restaurants where global flavors meet Southern comfort. Talk to the students, designers, and activists who see Texas not as a fixed idea, but as an evolving canvas. The stereotypes melt away the moment you see it up close, replaced by a sense of energy, possibility, and pride that's impossible to fake. What makes Texas so fascinating is that it's rewriting the American rulebook while staying unapologetically itself. The state's fearless attitude toward growth, bold, risky, sometimes stubborn, is exactly what's pushing it ahead of the curve. It's a place that refuses to choose between innovation and tradition, proving that the two can coexist in the same skyline. If there's one lesson for the rest of the country, it's this: transformation doesn't require permission. It requires belief. Belief that your community can change, that your city can evolve, that your identity can stretch without breaking. Texas isn't just a place on a map anymore. It's a mindset. The story of what comes next is being written right now, and the rest of America would do well to take note.